passive men. Welcome to Change the Conversation with the Hopefulist. My name is Wendy McClure, and it's time we had a conversation about living in a patriarchy and how that affects our lives. Together, we can make a difference and change the conversation. It took me 50 years to recognize patriarchy and how much it has influenced my life, and that is why I now question everything. Now, if you're a loyal listener of Change the Conversation with the Hopefulist, I do appreciate you, but you may have heard this before. I want to talk about the language that we use, because that's what this podcast is all about. It's about changing the conversation, about making language more accurately represented of accountability. So this is a quote from Jackson Katz, who says, "We talk about how many women were raped last year, not how many men raped women. We talk about how many girls in a school district were harassed last year, not about how many boys harassed girls. We talk about how many teenage girls in the state of Texas got pregnant last year, rather than how many boys and men impregnated teenage girls." So you can see how the use of passive voice has political effect. It shifts the focus off of men and boys and onto girls and women. Even the term violence against women is problematic. It is a passive construction. There's no active agent in the sentence. It's just a bad thing that happens to women. But when you look at the term violence against women, nobody's doing it to them. It just happens. Men aren't even a part of it. So that is a big part of the problem that we have in this country when it comes to patriarchy. Everything is skewed in the direction to let men off the hook, and not only let men off the hook, but turn around and blame it on the victim to make it seem like the women are the problem. It's violence against women. Should be just men's violence. Men's violence, men raping, men sexually assaulting. You know, I go back to one of my favorites, single mother. Okay, and they have such a bad reputation. Like, we all just hear the word single mother, and we have been trained to think that's a bad thing. Oh, it's bad when they come up in a single mother household. Okay, it really should be absentee father. That's what we all should be saying that, men included. Men included. And that's what I want to talk about today, because I have once again been accused of being a man-hater, of bashing men, and apparently they're very offended. And the women that know them are offended on their behalf. So let's talk about the men in your life, okay? Are they supportive partners who treat you as an equal? They don't abuse you or play mind tricks, gaslight, or manipulate you? Well, congratulations. That's great. But that's what they're supposed to do and not do. That is what we call the bare minimum. And let me talk about the bare minimum for a second, because that's all men have been held to for the last 200 years in this country. The bare minimum. And when women start to want more than the bare minimum in a relationship, we get a loneliness crisis. Men who can't find women to date, men who can't find anybody that wants to have sex with them. Because when we ask for just a little bit more than the bare minimum, then we are unreasonable. Then we are crazy. So we went through that for a while, and then women decided they didn't care. They didn't care if they were called crazy. They didn't care if they were called the problem, because we know that's not true. They didn't care that they were being called single cat ladies who would die alone. They didn't care about any of that. They decided they wanted to go it alone. That there were so few men that were willing to do more than the bare minimum that they just gave up. And even that is our fault too. Even when we opt out of dating, that's our fault too. Why can't you just, lower your standards? Well, if you get into a marriage and your husband is abusive, then, well, we didn't pick the right man. We are set up to fail no matter what we do. So, trust me, there are a lot of men out there that do all of the horrible things that I just mentioned without any of the support or equality. So let's dig a little deeper, okay? Let's talk about the men in your life. Are they voting for the people who are actively taking away women's rights and trying to take away even more? Then they're not allies. Do they speak up when they see other men harass women in public? Then they're not allies. Do they shut down locker room talk with their buddies and tell them how disrespectful it is to the women in their lives to do that, and women in general? Do they tell their guy friends that say, well, she said no, but I talked her into it. She really wanted it. That coercing someone into sex is wrong and they shouldn't do that? Are they for the Equal Rights Amendment? Do they think that women who dress provocatively deserve to be attacked? Do they think it's girls' responsibility in school to make sure they don't distract the boys? Do they get uncomfortable when women are in charge? Or do they correct their colleagues who interrupt her and call her names behind her back? Then they're not an ally. Are they willing to change their language to the things that I just pointed out to be more accurate of men's actions? Even headlines are written in a way that take heat off of men and put it on the woman. Woman dies after her boyfriend sets her on fire. Hello? Woman is murdered by her boyfriend. That's the headline. That's the accurate headline. Speaking of headlines, the woman in France who was drugged by her husband and recruited dozens of men to rape her while she was unconscious. Now, did one of those men, one of them who showed up to rape her, say, this is wrong, I'm actually going to call the police? No, dozens of men chose to take advantage of the situation. They didn't have a problem with it. Now, do you think that this woman had any idea that her husband was this kind of monster? Do you think that she would have been with him if she had any inkling that he had this evilness within him? So men are good at hiding things. They only show what they want you to see. But we're supposed to just know which one are the good ones and which one are the bad ones. When there were dozens of men coming in and raping a woman that was unconscious, they're not allies. Let's talk about the celebrities that we have loved. Let's talk about America's dad, Bill Cosby, who admitted he drugged women so he could have sex with them. Matt Lauer locked women in his dressing room. He had a button that would lock the door from his desk so they didn't have a chance to run to the door and get out before he was able to lock it. Charlie Rose. I mean, these are people that we were supposed to look up to. We were supposed to think were good men. And they weren't good men. How about Michael Jackson, Harvey Weinstein, Sean Combs, R. Kelly, Chris Brown, Danny Masterson, Bill O'Reilly, Jeffrey Epstein, Donald Trump? The list goes on and on. Donald Trump has been accused by at least 26 women of sexual abuse. And he was found legally liable for one of them, and then he went on to slander her. Because this is what men do when they get caught, is they turn it and try and make the woman look bad by saying things like, oh, trust me, she's not the one I would have I attacked. I would have attacked somebody much more attractive than her. They try to shame her in that way, one, in an effort to not get them to report it in the first place. And I don't know how any woman or any man who loves a woman can even consider putting that man back into office when we know of at least one with many more accusations that he was accused and found liable for sexual battery. Now, if that were your daughter or your wife or your sister, would you vote for him then? Would you then think that maybe he shouldn't be in the highest office in the land, that he might not be fit to run for president of the United States? Because what kind of message is this sending young men? Honestly, when a man who has been found liable for sexual assault, sexual battery, whatever you want to call it, he sexually assaulted that woman, and he can be president of the United States, do you think that's going to help young men think that they shouldn't rape women? Do you think that they see that there's not that much of a consequence when you do? You know, let's go back to the Brock Turner case where he sexually assaulted a woman behind a dumpster when she was unconscious. And the judge said, well, let's not ruin his life for, 5 minutes of pleasure. What about the woman? Why are we making excuses? Oh, let's not ruin his life. He chose to do that. That was him. But now this woman has no justice because some judge thought, well, let's not ruin his whole life over it. But the woman's life has been ruined. She's going to live with that every day for the rest of her life, but nobody cares about the woman. I put up a post last week or so that said, she's somebody's wife, mother, daughter, what have you. And all of the other things were crossed out. And it just simply said, with the cross-outs, she's someone. Why do we have to be linked to somebody else, usually a man or a mother, in order to have any empathy for them? Why is that? That women don't deserve to just live freely because they're a person, because they're a human. They have to be tied to a man or tied to children. Women don't walk alone at night because why? Because they fear men. Women don't travel alone often because it makes them vulnerable to men who are evil. Women think facing a bear in the woods is safer for them than coming across a man they don't know. And men agreed when it was presented to them about their wives and their daughters. They chose the bear as well. What does that say? That men know how dangerous they are perceived. They know. Are they doing anything to try and help that situation? Because if they're not, then they're not our ally. So unless the men you know are actively working against these issues, not only are they not allies, but they are complicit in keeping things the way they currently are. And the way that things currently are is designed for a woman to be wrong no matter what the situation is. And you can dispute that all you want. It doesn't make it not true. You can call it playing the victim all you want. It's still the truth. Because women have been blamed for male abuses for years, for decades, for centuries. And we've all fallen for it. We've all fallen for it. I thought most of my life that it was the woman's fault if she was dressed provocatively. Well, she's just asking for it, wearing that outfit. Why is there not a rape constantly on the beach then? Have you been to a beach lately? Do you see how little clothes they're wearing there? But magically, there's no rapes going on. You know why? because men know how to control themselves. And to perpetrate this idea that they can't control themselves because they see a little bit of cleavage is ridiculous. It's not true. Men can control themselves. They can stop themselves from being abusive. They can stop themselves from yelling. They do it every single time a boss yells at them. I guarantee you that. So stop thinking that men are so innocent in all of this. There is a huge rehaul that needs to be done to the system and the society that we live in. And that is why I do this podcast each and every week and post on social media several times a day to bring awareness to it. And how do I know about all of this? Well, I will tell you. I educate myself. I read. I research. I follow studies. I follow news stories. I follow things that are happening. I'm also going to seminars and I'm going to conferences and I have my own lived experience. And if you don't think that qualifies me, then you don't have to listen. It's just that simple. So I know what I'm talking about. And if you don't agree with me, that's okay. Does it make it untrue? Everything I have said, it is 100% true. So I don't know what else to tell you. But if your man is not actively working against all of this stuff, and the very least that they can do is to vote for the people who are not trying to actively take away more of our rights, because the right to our own bodies have already been wiped away for half of the states in this country. And if they get into office, there will be a national ban on abortion. Mark my words. And that's just insane. So I'm sorry if you feel offended for your loved ones that are male, but are they doing any of the things that I mentioned? Any of them at all? Any? Because they're still just trying to take away as many rights as they can. They just did this, what's it called? The SAVE Act, I think. They tried to tie it to the funding of the government that said that they wanted every person who votes to bring their birth certificate and current ID, and that if the names on the birth certificate and the current ID didn't match, then they would not be able to vote. So whose name would not match their birth certificate? Oh, that's right. It would be married women. It would be married women that wouldn't be able to vote according to this law that they just tried to pass last week, and they didn't. And I said to my husband, yeah, even 15 Republicans voted against it. And he said, why didn't they all vote against it? That's an ally. That's seeing things as they should be. Who would vote for that? So that is the end of my little rant today. And now I want you to go out there and be badass. And remember, I'm always cheering you on. Thank you for joining me in this conversation. Together, we are better. Please visit my website at hopefulist.com and remember to hit that subscribe or follow button.